Hello, dear sisters and brothers, and welcome. Welcome to this special Faith Perspective series on the Synod on Synodality. Today we're into the third episode of the series. I'm Andrea Chak on Catholic SG Radio. Now, the Faith Perspective gives us this opportunity to discuss trending issues or events that are happening in the church and in the world. And in particular, today, of course, we are talking about the Synod that is ongoing in the Vatican. This is the 16th Ordinary General Assembly that we're talking about of the Synod of Bishops, and of course, together with the Holy Father Pope Francis, leading the Synod Fathers, priests, religious, and lay participants of the Synod. Now, to share their thoughts, you can see today it's a little bit crowded, but we're very happy to have all of them to share with us their thoughts. Today we have with us, right in the middle, Sister Leticia Candelario Lopez. Did I get that correct, Sister?
Correct.
Yes, okay. She's a Verbum Dei missionary, and, she's actually got a good story, really. Actually, first of all, she's a Synod Singapore committee member. She teaches theology and ecclesiology at the St. Francis Xavier's Major Seminary, as well as the Catholic Theology Institute here in Singapore. She's also a member of the international team sponsored by the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity that is responsible for actually writing the text for the 2024 World Day of Prayer for Christian Unity service. Yeah. Wow. She's also a member of the Archdiocesan Catholic Council for Interreligious Dialogue and Archdiocesan Catholic Council for Ecumenical Dialogue. Thank you so much, Sister.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's a real pleasure to have you. Okay. The other lady that we have on today's panel, another new face joining us, actually not so new to Catholic SG Radio and, our programs, Victoria Lim. Victoria is a member of the Archcom's team at the Archbishop's Office, and she is the Catholic News Singapore's correspondent. Victoria was most recently in Rome and participated in the Ecumenical Prayer Vigil just before the start of the Synod on Synodality, which began on the 4th of October. And she just completed a program called Faith Communication in the Digital World, a Synodal Perspective. So that's why she is here. Yes. Also with us today, you remember this face, of course, Nick Tree. Nick is a lay theologian, and he's a graduate with Masters in Theology from the John Paul II Institute in Melbourne, Australia. He's also a member of our Catholic Theology Network, which is associated with the Catholic Archdiocese of Singapore. He's a full-time educator in one of our Catholic schools, and he's also been for us and for this program, our research producer for this series. Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get into it. It's been announced at the end at the end of its work, the 16th Ordinary General Assembly of the Synod of Bishops will draft what is called a letter message for all the people of God. Cardinal Hollerich said that the synthesis report will be a transitional text based on the experience of the Assembly, which will contain the points where there is consensus and those where there is a lack of agreement, as well as open questions that will need to be studied in depth from a canonical, a theological, and pastoral point of view to be verified together with the people of God. That's quite reassuring, actually. Yeah. It'll have a simple style, thank goodness. It will not be a final document, nor will it be the instrumentum laboris all over again. The Cardinal clarified that, and he said, adding that it'll only really serve to accompany the subsequent phases of the Synod on Synodality. This week began with the discussions about missionary work, to interreligious dialogue, to the role of women in serving the church. So we're going to start with you, Sister.
Sure.
And I'm going to ask you, at the start of the synodal process here in Singapore, you gave a sharing on becoming a synodal church. And so for our listeners and for those viewers who may be just joining us for the first time, can you just give us maybe a shorter version? You gave a 15-minute exhortation that time, but just a shortened version of that. And what does that mean?
Yeah, the mere words becoming a synodal church tells us what we are in for. Right. We are becoming. we are not yet a synodal church, and hence communion, participation, and mission are the way in which the Pope invites the entire church to enter this process. Communion, because that is essential to the identity of the church. Participation, because we all know that there was a call for all people to come and participate in the process by giving their opinions, by participating in the dialogues, by coming together. And mission, because that's the aim, right? That's why we are together. That's the reason why God has called us to participate in the mission of bringing Christ's salvation to all. So these are the three aspects through which we started these dialogues at the beginning of the synodal process. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Okay. So having said that there, how then does the perspective of a synodal church transform the understanding of mission and enable its different dimensions to be articulated? Well,
on one hand, because the mission belongs to the entire church. It is not a task given just to a portion of the people of God. It is the mission in which we are all invited to participate. Hence, the need to come together and journey together in this process. Yeah.
Right. Nick, what are your thoughts on this?
I was actually quite struck by what you mentioned about Cardinal Holleric's transitional document. He says that it will attempt to capture what about mission, what is it about Catholic mission that there is consensus on? What is it that there's no consensus on?
That's right.
And finally, what ought to be studied from a canonical/theological perspective?
That's right.
I thought that was very fair-minded because it captures precisely the voices within the Synod. It's fair-minded, in my view, for two reasons. First, it does recognize that consensus does exist even among diverse participants. And you can say maybe not our program, but many media outlets out there like to look at divergence, because conflict creates drama, and maybe go and improves ratings, but maybe sometimes at the expense of truth. Yeah. So because consensus doesn't have much drama,
Of course.
Man, woman gets along each other. That's not in the news. Yeah. Man punches woman. That's in the news, So if that's the case, Cardinal Holleric mentions that there is consensus and we should treasure that. But he also mentions that there is also aspects in which that there is no consensus. So, and I think you did not mention what exactly, but he does recognize that there are certain things. Should the church be doing this? How should the church be doing this? I suspect what the church should be doing, how the church should be doing. These are the two things which some areas probably there's no consensus. I suspect, but I don't know. So that's second. But there is a way to solve it, and he mentions from a canonical and theological perspective.
That's right.
And
pastoral as well.
Yeah, pastoral.
There are, so to say, mechanisms within the church to solve these problems.
Right.
He mentions three, canonical, pastoral, theological perspective. What he did not mention, and I think that's a good thing, is a democratic vote. That's not the way to solve how do we get consensus. We will poll the people, and so to say, and simply decide. So Pope Francis says the church is not a parliament.
Right.
That's not how we identify conflicts and resolve them. And the three methods, theological perspective, canonical perspective, and pastoral perspective, would be the correct way to solve these problems. And for that, at least, I think that's a step in the right direction.
Right. Interestingly, though, that when this was mentioned by Cardinal Holleric that this letter would be written, it was actually put to a vote. And
fair enough.
And there were only 11 dissenters.
Okay, sure.
The rest all said, yeah, go on with it.
Makes sense.
So
fair enough.
Yeah, quite interesting. Victoria, we'll be with you in a while. I just need to just set some things in place before we come to you. Sister, for a synodal church, what should be done for a synodal church and for us to see that all that we do actually really is ministerial and missionary for the church?
That goes to the heart of the Christian vocation. In fact, the entire church is ministerial.
Right. And we are all co-responsible.
Yes, we have all received gifts from the Holy Spirit at baptism, and we all participate in this identity of priests, prophets, and kings. Different people receive different gifts, talents, charisms that enrich the church, and they are to be put at the service of the mission. One of the things that we need to also be aware of is that there is a differentiation between the ministerial gifts, let's say,
right,
and those given to the lay people. But they all work for the same objective. Right. So the church is ministerial. We can say that. Each one according to our own vocation, according to our own call. But we all have received gifts and build up the church. And we minister to each other as well, isn't it? When we are listening and when we are being community, actually. See, very seldom do people think about that we are ministering to each other also, right? People only think of the ministerial priesthood in that manner, that only the priests can do that. Only they, of course, through ordination, they'll listen to confession and celebrate the sacraments and all of that. But all of us minister to each other when, in fact, now, in a sense, we are ministering to each other as well. I would like to think so. Yes, of course.
Okay, so let's bring in this young lady now, slightly younger. Victoria, just want your thoughts. So I mentioned that you just came back from Rome. Just share with us, you were all pretty young, I think, 15, 16 of you all?
Yeah, not 15 or 16 years old.
No. I'm sorry, not that young. You wish. but there were about that number of you all?
16 of us.
From around the world?
On the program.
Yeah.
And the majority of us were actually from Asia. So from places like Mongolia, from the Southeast Asian countries like Timor-Leste, the Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia. And also we have had friends as well from the African continent, so from Kenya, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, and also a friend, just one, from Brazil, from the Latin American continent. So it was a very, in a sense, for me, it was a mini, youth synod.
Yes,
you could call it.
Yeah.
Where we spent, just to give a bit of background to the program. Actually, it's still ongoing now until April next year. So we began in May this year, where we all met online. We've been meeting on Zoom every week to learn about the synodal, how is it to be a digital communicator in a synodal church.
Right.
And, how, and it was an interesting program because I first went in with the mindset that I was going to learn tools. Of course, they gave us tools and, people came and gave us talks and everything. But what surprised me was the monthly sessions that we had talking to one another. So, they would split us up into different groups on the Zoom and we would share our, much like a synod, where we shared our joys of being a communicator in the church and also our sorrows and our challenges and it was, in fact, it began to what I thought it was, something like, I'm going to learn something. But then it became more of a faith experience whereby I found myself recognizing Christ, not just in the participants, but also in our midst, as he was also ministering to us, as we were sharing with one another and hearing each other and hearing and then encouraging each other along on this journey.
Right.
So that week in Rome was particularly special because for the first time in months, we saw each other in person. We could touch and feel the other person.
Right.
And really, and in that sense, because we've been journeying already, the sharing became all the more richer because we've known each other for a couple of months and
that's beautiful.
And it continued in Rome. Yeah.
Again, you ministered to each other.
Yes. Yeah. And there were so many grace-filled moments that week whereby we also, moved by the Holy Spirit, really realized things about ourselves, about each other,
About the
gifts,
church?
Yeah, the church, the gifts and talents that each of us had, and how each of us actually contributes to the church in our own special little way, wherever we are from. And I think like what Sister said, all of us, by our virtue of baptism, have, these Holy Spirit, has the gifts from the Holy Spirit to proclaim the good news, the salvation to all.
So as communicators, right, who were there in Rome and being at the threshold, literally, of the start of this actually historic synod, right? What were or did you all come with some sort of expectation, or did you all leave also with a sort of expectation that the synod would be like this, or what were your thoughts of what the synod should be?
For me personally, is to throw away all expectations, because like I mentioned earlier, I had expectations of that program, this program, but I realized soon that actually we just need to allow the Holy Spirit to work, through each of us, and somehow you'll see, like God is just bringing us now on an adventure, on a little dance, I would say, and we'll find out along the way. But most importantly, right now we have to listen. We have to listen to where the Holy Spirit is taking not just each and every one of us, but as a community. How is He moving us as a church community towards what He wants for His church? Yeah.
So beautifully said.
Yeah.
So beautifully said.
Yeah.
And there were people from all over the place. What sort of limitations or what sort of challenges did they have being synodal in their own dioceses or areas that they came from? Were they able to share that?
Yeah, so I would say that actually the one thing that really was very stark was language. So because many of us, in Singapore, we are very blessed to have English as our main language.
The working language, yeah.
Exactly. And most of us speak English and can converse very easily. But in countries like, for example, I was speaking to a counterpart in Brazil, right?
Right.
She was telling me that, yes, they speak Portuguese, but there are so many indigenous languages. And the further you go from the city, there's more and more and more. And and also same for the other countries as well. Like in Timor-Leste, there's so many different ethnic languages. He couldn't even tell me how many because there's just so many. And it made me realize that actually this is a very beautiful gift, this moment that we're having now, to be able to somehow come up with that instrumentum laboris document, even though all of us speak different languages. It made me realize that not everyone speaks English, not everyone speaks Italian, but yet somehow the Holy Spirit has moved and has in different ways shown, this is something that we need to look into. There are these different, being missionary, how can we be more missionary and things like that. So I think, that has been a barrier, but yet a blessing because somehow the Holy Spirit has helped us along.
Some would say, this is like the Tower of Babel syndrome. And then it's moved to a Pentecostal or the Pentecost experience, right?
And I think it's wonderful that you're bringing that up because just as we were leaving the Ecumenical Vigil, the Nigerian participant who was with me, he said, it's interesting how, like back then, the Tower of Babel, right? Like God, in a way, punished the people with different languages, right?
To confuse them.
Correct, to confuse them. But now we are united, even though in different languages, but we are united in the Holy Spirit. And we are able to sing the same songs, because during the Ecumenical Vigil, there was a lot of singing.
Right. Yes.
There was a lot of praying. But yet all of us were able to participate together, right? And sing the same song and same love for Christ. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Victoria. Beautiful. Sister, what are your thoughts? I mean, just listening to this young person sharing that experience, but she's also able to see the beauty of the diversity, but still our unity in the Spirit.
Yeah, that's one of the most beautiful experiences that anyone coming close to the church can experience. The diversity of people's languages, backgrounds, social status, whatever the differences are, and coming together for a common purpose, which is not of any human purpose, but rather something that goes beyond us because it's coming from God. Right. So I guess that experience of communion in the diversity is edifying, is very much enriching.
Right.
And I think that is something that we all long for, looking at the reality of the world, of division and differences. I think that's something that we can, as church, contribute to the world.
What, Victoria, you said you had no expectations of this synod. Yeah. What do you think about that, Nick?
I guess, Victoria, meant that you didn't know what to expect, or you were just open to whatever. Yes. You had a general trust that God will triumph in the end.
Yes.
And you see what happens from there. Would that be? I think that's a good Christian attitude in the midst of anxiety,
right.
Or maybe sometimes even some would consider over facile optimism. So overly facile optimism, overly optimistic.
Right.
There is still hope. Rooted not so much in wishful thinking, but in the belief that the Holy Spirit will never abandon His church.
Right.
I think insofar as there is that hope, it's a well-grounded one.
I think we cannot be shallow to discount that there are going to be differences.
Yes, of
Definitely.
course.
There are going to be differences, right? I mean, from our own experiences, our cultures and all of that. And then, as you said, just the idea of language being, it can be a barrier, but then that need not be also as well. But the worry is not so much, I think, the languages. For me, the worry is the ego. It's the human ego.
Yeah.
I think that becomes our biggest, problem in that sense. And so if we can let go of that ego and really truly surrender it to the Spirit and to the Lord, I think then truly we could become the missionary church or the church that Christ meant us to be for the world, right? Yeah. Well, sisters and brothers, if you've just joined us, welcome to the Faith Perspective here on Catholic SG Radio. Thank you so much. We are talking about the Synod on Synodality, and we have with us three wonderful visitors today. Sister Leticia is a Verbum Dei missionary, and Nick Chui has been our research producer for this program, and Victoria Lim is also from the Catholic News. I just want to continue looking at, coming back to you actually, Victoria. Actually in 2018, there was a synod on young people. And in his post-synodal exhortation, Christus Vivit, in March 2019, when it was publicized, Pope Francis said to the young people, as well as to the whole church, Christ is alive, and he wants you to be alive. So where do you think the young people of the church see themselves today in the synodality of the church?
I think the Synod on Synodality has been a great gift to young people. Especially in a sense to know that they have a sense of co-responsibility to the mission, or rather this fact has been brought forward to awareness of the young people. And, during, I think we had the Archdiocesan Assembly, we had young people participating in it. And I do see an increase. I mean, personally, as a Catholic News reporter, I've seen more and more young people wanting to come forward, with their gifts and talents to see how they could contribute to the mission of the church.
Right.
So I think the Synod on Synodality it's been a great gift for us. And I think the hope is that this culture of synodality will continue even after this whole process.
Right.
and that the church will continue to listen and to also consult with young people. How is it that the church can make Christ relevant to new Catholics and even the younger ones who are maturing in the faith and growing in the faith. So,
right.
Yeah.
So maybe sometimes even a re-catechesis also of our own. I mean, that's what the new evangelization is supposed to be, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Sister, I did say that the week began with the role of women in serving the church as one of those particular parts. Yes, so that's a huge topic. From your own experience and your own experience as a religious, what are your thoughts on this particular area?
Listening to Father Timothy Ratcliffe in the fourth meditation, when he invited the participants to the synod to listen, to be open to each other, to open dialogues, I think that's one of the areas in which I see very much a need to listen to what are the needs of the people, and in this case particularly of women, not to dismiss what is it that they have to say or that we have to say, include myself. They need to hear stories.
Right.
They need to see what are the different talents, in which ways we can contribute. I know that a lot of the polarization in the dialogue has been about women's ordination and all that, which some women feel very strongly about.
Yes.
Personally, I think there are many areas within the church in which we can contribute. As mothers, as sisters, as companions, as listeners, as religious, as educators. There are so many areas in which women can contribute, and we are contributing. And I do include myself.
Yes.
But I think there is this opening with the synodal process to be able to hear the voices that so far have been silent or have not been heard enough or are not yet out there in the open, which I think will enrich greatly the church. Right. And as I said, leaving aside the polarization of certain topics, as I said, there are groups of women within the church that feel very strongly about it, but perhaps it's not everyone.
Yes.
Right? And there are many areas in which I personally can see we can contribute.
Indeed.
So for me, it's very much opening the dialogue, allowing women to contribute from where they are. And also, as you said, not everything we might not agree in everything, right? Yep. There is a need for change. And one of the things, or one of the areas in which I see a need for change is how we collaborate in the church, how women can collaborate or further collaborate in the church. Not so much as subordinates,
right,
but as peers,
yes,
as companions in this journey of contributing to the church.
Right.
Yeah, and I see one of the areas in which I also see a need for women particularly is if we want to contribute into the church, we need to be ready for that. It means we have to equip ourselves, we need to be formed so that our contribution can make a mark. Not so much so that we might be seen, but so that others that come behind us can see that they can also participate and be part of this whole process of the church, in which there might some might feel that they are not part of it, but I think there is opportunity. There should be more opportunity for participation and collaboration.
I love that. And the peership, I truly agree with that. Truly agree. Victoria, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I definitely think I would speak for our diocese, our archdiocese.
Yes.
I think I've observed rather, like that concrete steps have been taken. Recently,
are they enough?
Of course, it's a work in progress. Everything is a work in progress.
Well said. Okay, good.
But I would say that, in the last in last years, especially, like for example, the setting up of the APC, there's actually a women's voice.
Yes.
There's women's voice
Yes.
within that. The Archdiocesan Pastoral Council.
Yes.
And also, recently the Catholic News ran a series on our archdiocesan officers.
Yes.
And, in places like the Chancery Office, there's so many women.
So many ladies there. Yes.
Yeah. And even in places like the PSO office as well.
That's correct.
We have a secretariat who is a female.
Yes.
And and personally for myself, I've been going for classes at the CTIS. So I've also seen that many of my classmates are women.
Ladies, yeah.
Ladies
Yeah.
of all ages, from the young to the old. And I see that there have been many pathways for us, to learn, to be educated.
Right.
And even being on this Faith Communicators program, out of the 16 of us, most of us were women as well. And, how wonderful is that? Because I think it would have been unheard of in the past, right? It would just be, So I think there has been an increased participation. And I hope that the church also continues to provide more opportunities and platforms for more women to come forward.
The first apostle of the resurrection
is
exactly. Mary Magdalene. Right?
Yeah.
And she was the one who said, "The Lord is risen, excuse me." And then we had these men who were like, still not sure what was happening. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, as the gentleman on the panel, Nick.
It's a very dangerous thing to do. Men talking about women. But I'll try in any
Sister's
case.
feather duster is there.
That's all right.
Somewhere.
I guess the question of women's ordination sometimes take up an inordinate amount of time, in terms of it's something. It's like a bit like a red flag, It depends on who you wave it at. People will charge, Those who are passionately against women's ordination will charge. Those who may desire women's ordination will do the same. Those who are passionately against women's ordination, from my experience, are not driven by misogyny, no, but driven by the simple fact that in 1994, John Paul II, in Ordinatio Sacerdotalis, says that by virtue of his apostolic authority, he declares that the church has no power to ordain women. So he's attempting to say it's divine revelation. And I'm invoking my apostolic authority to clarify and close this matter. So permitting women's ordination seems, for many Catholics, I would include myself into it, very honestly, as a irrevocable rupture from the faith. If we say that the faith can develop, but it doesn't mutate.
Right, okay.
It doesn't corrupt, but it can grow in understanding. How do you reconcile what is clearly not just a reversal of policy, but a reversal of divine revelation? So that is the concerns of those who are not. Pope Francis, I think, agrees with John Paul II. He has said so. But in the recent dubia, he did say words to the extent that the question is of women's ordination may not be as well articulated. The reasons for prohibition of women's ordination may not be as well articulated as it can be. So in shorthand, I'm a teacher, so occupational hazard. So it's like you give the student the answer sheet, the formula, the answer, but they have not worked out the formula in a satisfactory manner yet. So it seems that the formula,
Yes.
The answer is no, but we should have a helpful formula. It's like the judge, A judge gives a verdict. He is authorized to give a verdict, but people will be very eager to know the reasoning. And very often, if you satisfy them with the reasoning, they would be, even if the verdict is unfavorable to them, they'll be like, okay, fair enough, life goes on. So when the Pope says that maybe the judgment, I accept it, the verdict, maybe we need to develop. I think that's legit.
Right.
And a secondary point is all the examples Victoria and Sister mentioned, all the opportunities opened up for women, and nobody have any objection to these things,
Right.
And these are common ground in which when we see these opportunities opening, etc. And then perhaps the question I would want to pose to to men and women who argue for the ordination of women: what drives you? Maybe after you listen very carefully, it is, this is a caricature. I just want the opportunity to study theology. No, already have. Then I need to ordain women for what? For example, of course, this is just a caricature, but the whole idea is that if you listen carefully, if you ask the question, what drives you? Perhaps all these opportunities would already drive, have already been met. So that I thought something to think about. And if I may just very quickly talk about one important historical episode in Singapore's history about the role of women missionaries. It's actually across our road, CHIJ Town Convent.
Yes.
Because CHIJ Town Convent, among the things they do, the Gate of Hope, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Still there?
Women, religious sisters, IJ sisters, will rescue other women from being thrown into the Singapore River because they were born in the year of the tiger. So the missionaries were pioneers of women's education, the pioneers of recognizing women as equal in dignity to men.
Indeed.
And this is this concrete contribution to a more humane society was something that the IJ sisters pioneered. And today we take for granted. A boy studies with a girl in a co-ed school. Nobody ever questions, why are you here studying? That's not the question. We may argue about many things, this, that, why are you so annoying and so on. But nobody ever argues about why are you even here. No boy ever argues, why are you even here? You shouldn't be studying. No, it does not happen. So it has seeped into the consciousness in Singapore society that women being able to study as co-equals with men is just something taken for granted, and that's a good thing.
And that doesn't happen in all over the world.
And it doesn't happen all over the world. So if you want to talk about concrete contributions, the IJ sisters planted the seed, and now, at least in the Singapore context, we have a flower.
We're truly blessed indeed. I just want to take Sister's point on peerage. Peers are supposed to be really good friends. We can talk about things. We can agree to disagree as well, but with great charity and, with understanding as well. And you're talking about the sisters. I'm just going to quote here Sister Patricia Murray, and she is the Executive Secretary of the International Union of Superiors General, right? And she said that Catholic sisters are on the front line of the world's most urgent humanitarian and development challenges. And they are, going to have this meeting really on the 23rd and 24th of this month, as not exactly part of the synodal process, but it seems to be, I suppose, corresponding with what is happening at the Synod. And I think it says it all, that women religious are really are put in dire situations. We just have to look at the Gaza right now, right, and what's happening. And some of the religious sisters are pinned down and just can't leave, right? And that is the situation. Sister, your thoughts on?
Yeah, women have always been at the front line when there are humanitarian needs, or in many cases of religious communities when there is a conflict in the country where they are serving. That was the case of our community. We have a community in the Democratic Republic of Congo when there have been always conflicts and very violent conflicts. Our sisters remain. And they were all foreigners, majority foreigners, but they decided it was an option to remain. So there are many instances in which women show a commitment to the people to the end. And I think that's a very laudable way of exercising their ministry or living their commitment to the people. Yeah, there are many areas in which women are at the front line. But as I said, there are other avenues as well in which women can still, have opportunities to exercise that core responsibility within the church, without going to the extremes of like what Nick was mentioning about women's ordination, which we know that's a topic that creates a lot of controversy.
Yeah,
There are many other opportunities, like studying theology before Vatican II was impossible for women.
Yes.
But nowadays, more and more women are also educators in the faith.
Absolutely.
So I guess that is a matter of doors opening, and for sure women will take the opportunity. Yes. So I guess that the more doors open, the more we will see women coming forward and contributing to the growth of the church. It's not for a personal growth, it's for the growth of the church.
Yeah.
So to put things on equal footing, so to speak now, let us talk a little bit about the ordained ministry. How can we properly then value the ordained ministry in its relationship with the baptismal ministries from a missionary perspective now?
I will say, so if we look at the theology of this, the theology of the ordained ministry, it's a very specific way of looking at a ministry, right? It participates in the unique ministry of Christ.
Right.
And we, the baptized, share in the common dignity. And we share a common dignity. And that participation in the common priesthood is already participation in the mission of the church. Which I think is something that we all share. And it's something that perhaps we haven't even unpacked fully. Yeah. So perhaps the task that we need to encourage people to take on is unpack the gift of your baptism and see that you are also given the dignity of a priest, a prophet, and a king.
Right.
A participation in the common priesthood, which enables you to live your vocation.
Yes.
The dignity comes from baptism, and we all have different vocations. Me in the consecrated life, others in marriage, others in different walks of life, the ordained. There are different vocations in the church through which we can live that baptismal consecration. So I think a lot of it is, as I mentioned, unpack the gift that you have been given. And you will see that you can contribute in so many ways in the mission of the church. Hence the topic, or hence the collaboration, right? Collaboration. How can we collaborate if we are not aware of the gifts that we have been already given? That for me is important. And talking about I guess when it comes to the ordained, yes, they are given the 3 different ministries. So they are ordained for these 3 ministries, right? Yes. The ministry of the word, the ministry of sanctification, the sacraments, and leading or governing in the church.
Right, correct.
So collaboration from the part of the lay people comes in any of these. In the case of priests, they come as one. These 3 components. But collaboration from the part of the lay people, whether men or women, can come in any of these 3 areas.
Right.
And that doesn't make us ordained.
Right.
And that doesn't make us part of the ordained ministry. We are still living our baptismal consecration, the grace of the baptismal consecration, but in a collaboration, with the different states of life within the church.
And that, as you talk about that collaboration, that also makes us all ecclesia, isn't it?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Too often we think of ecclesiology as the hierarchy of the church with the ministerial priesthood, but actually together, all of us make up this
the people
ecclesia,
of God.
the people of God.
Yes.
Yeah, that is very powerful. That is very, very, very powerful. Nick?
I was last week I spoke about the difference between power and authority, and I can't help but think of the same difference when we discuss the ministerial priesthood. If you look at it concretely, what powers do the ministerial priests have? I mean, power understood in purely secular terms. They run the parish, fair enough. They decide whether in this year we should have the parish fun fair or not.
Okay.
I get to decide. The final decision does lie with the parish priest, canonically speaking.
That is true.
How many catechism classes should we have? These are important things, but that's within the parish. The priest has power, so to say. But when the lay person is in the world, he's a teacher, he's a lawyer, he's a businessman, or he's an entrepreneur, or whichever job, the priest doesn't have power. The priest at most has authority, because whatever he shares and he preaches comes from Jesus Christ. It resonates with the lay person, and the lay person, on his or her own accord, will try to be that particular Christian witness. The priest doesn't have power. If you own your business, the CEO, or if you are part of a multinational company, the CEO has power over you. The parish priest doesn't have. So that is just as simple as a lay person, right? In that sense. But if Father's homilies have been soul stirring, because it has helped you to love Jesus Christ, it continues to have authority.
And that's empowerment as well.
Empowerment.
Yeah.
And likewise, so that's the difference. And likewise for lay people, sometimes, again, some who want to clamor for women's ordination or lay ministers, etc., more power in the church. What exactly do you want? Do you want to veto Father because he called for the parish fund fair this year? You want to veto?
Right.
Do you want what power are you seeking and why?
Correct.
And so that's my question. You have your domain where you have secular power. That is yours already. And the priest would have to enter that space and recognize his limits. So both parties, lay and clergy, will have to recognize the limits of their power, but can both strive to maximize the limits of maximize their authority if they both listen to the authority, which is Christ himself. So that's
right.
I thought I'd like to point that out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can I
Sister?
say a word?
Yes, yeah, please.
Yes, so if we look at the priesthood as power, of course, the power, as you mentioned, the power in the secular world works in a very different way. Has that power is within the church, right? And in some instances, depending on the country, you also have some sort of power out there, right?
Yeah.
But I will say, in my experience, I've also come to share, especially in my work with the Ecumenical group,
Yes.
the international group, I have come to share with women of other denominations, particularly Lutheran.
Yes, that's right.
Lutheran pastors, and one of them is a lovely lady
Right.
who runs a parish in Germany and is a mother to 3 kids. And in one of our conversations, she asked me directly the question if I see that my ministry could have, she saw it in the positive, could have a greater, let's say, a greater reach if I was to participate in the
ordained ministry.
ministry.
Okay.
And she's not the first one that has asked me that. I have been asked that question in different places, including Singapore, by different people. I can say that, I'm Catholic, right? I am a Catholic and I love the church. And I see her, she experienced that call or that vocation to the priesthood not as power, because she experienced it as service. And I see her as a very fulfilled person because she's a mother, she's a pastor, she's a friend. She has a position within the Lutheran Church in her place. So there are different roles that she plays, and none of them clashes with the other. So, I guess that there are different experiences of how the ministry can be lived. And I guess that power is not the only.
Yes.
When it is experienced as a service to the community and as a vocation. Because when I asked her, so did you feel called to the ministry? Or was it something that fell on your lap? Because there was
That's a good question as well.
Yeah. So she said, no, I experienced it as a call.
Wow.
And I had the opportunity to go on mission. She went to Latin America for a few years, but still that persistent call to the ministry in that ordained ministry was something that she experienced very strongly. And her husband supports her. So I see the diversity of ways in which the ministry can be lived. of course, in other denominations.
Sure.
But I also see it not only lived as power, like as a power, as authority.
Diaconia?
Yeah, more as a service. Yes, the gift of a gift given for the service of others. And I like that. And I see, I haven't received that call. But I see another way of living the priesthood, and a very fulfilling call. And as I said, she is not the only person that has asked me that question. I have been asked that question in different places by different people, and it's interesting. I don't know what they see in me, but but yeah, I see the priesthood can live in a different way other than power.
I'm going to be a bit naughty and ask
Go
you.
ahead.
So, in that, thank you for sharing that, sister. It's really very powerful. But maybe if you can help us articulate, you said you live your common priesthood. How do you? Can you just share with us how you can express this living of this common priesthood?
Yes. So religious life or consecrated life is the living out of the baptismal promises in radicality.
Yes.
Right? That's why we leave everything behind and give our lives to Christ, the service of the church.
That's evangelical councils.
Through
yes.
our own charisms.
Right.
So to me, that's how I have felt the call of God in my life. And of course, one of the very positive things in my community is all the members in my community, we all study theology. And we were very much encouraged by our founder to study as much as you can.
Yes.
As much as you are given you can ask and you will be given. So I find that that's a way of living the talents that I have received from God by living the baptismal grace through consecrated life. That's a vocation.
Yeah.
And I find that it's my place. So as I said, I don't feel that I have received that call to the priesthood.
Right.
I don't. As I mentioned earlier, there are some women that feel very strongly about it. Not my case.
Right.
And I feel that I have a place in the church. I have a place in my community. I have a place within the community of the church where I can contribute the gifts that God has entrusted to me at the service of others. For me, that's very clear. At the service of others in the church.
We are
Not
very
away
grateful
from the
for your
church.
gift, sister. Truly.
Yes.
Truly. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so we have to wrap up soon. Just before we leave, maybe I think we already know where sister is in living, the mission of the church, and it's still in a very synodal way as well. Victoria, how do you see yourself now living out your own vocation within the missionary church?
Yeah, so I really resonate with what Sister Leticia said earlier about unpacking our baptismal call.
Yeah.
Right? And I think as I continue on this journey of understanding that baptismal call, I think just a couple of days back, I read to prepare for this interview, to be completely honest, because there's many big words. Right? I went to the catechism just to read up a little bit about our baptismal call. And I found myself so excited, reignited again, to realize that, hey, I've been called on this mission as well. And I have equal dignity
Indeed.
as to a priest, a religious person, that I have agency, that I can bring the gospel to someone else. And, it may not be through like certain ways that, perhaps maybe sister does or a priest does.
Absolutely.
But in my own way, through my interactions with my friends who may not necessarily be Catholic, being brave enough to share with them, and to then leave it to the Holy Spirit to do the rest, to share with them the love of Christ, first of all.
Right.
Not just through words, but my actions. And there's just so, and I find myself realizing that, hey, I actually have so many opportunities, I'm able to go out. I think for a religious person, you have to be in the community and stay with the community, right? And then you have to listen to
There's a certain
superiors.
rule. There's a certain rule.
Lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yes, a lifestyle.
Yeah. So then I recognize that, hey, actually in my vocation, there are so many ways that I can bring Christ to others.
Indeed.
Yeah, and I think it really opened my eyes once again to see that. And also because I'm married as well, like how I minister to my husband as well.
Absolutely.
You know, and to his extended family. So many opportunities to bring Christ to them, and not just through words, but I think importantly through actions. You know, how passionately in love, you know, people can see that. Like if you're passionately in love with Jesus, it really shines through, and people will know somehow. You know, you don't have to tell them. They'll be like, hey, there's something a bit strange about this person, you know? And they'll ask you, they will come up to you and say, hey, like, why are you so joyful, you know? Yeah, or what makes you think in a different way?
Yes.
Like, for example, when facing a conflict, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, I try to be as much as possible, as compassionate as possible, to listen, you know? As much as possible to the other party as well who has hurt me. I try to understand from their point of view. So I think when being countercultural, I think Nick mentioned earlier, like, you know, having actions like that, people will start to wonder, oh, why is this person so strange? Like, you know, normally you'll just be like, forget about this person that hurt me, you know. But I think the way of the Christian, of reaching out, of forgiving, of always reaching out. Yeah, I think that's something that people will find different, and then they'll be like, oh, hey, what's this secret potion that you have, you know?
Indeed. My dear, you're already living the synodal way. I would say so.
Yeah.
Nick, so as a father, as a Christian educator, I think that's a lot. But share with us your thoughts on
Thank you.
your own.
There was a hymn which goes that will know, and they will know that we are Christians by our love.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's of course something which inspires me. Unfortunately, maybe in my early years as an educator, that wasn't really the case. I remember it's a true story. I was actually giving students some so like after school type of consultation, right. And then subsequently I think because of timing I wanted to go for evening mass, so I told him I have to wrap up soon. Then she just uttered the following phrase: "Che, you Christian, huh? No wonder your English so good." Then, it stuck with me ever since then because she just said it spontaneously. So and I was just wondering, they will know they are Christian because your English so good. The hymn writer would have been disappointed.
Yeah, that's true.
Jesus Christ would be like, 我会讲华语. Correct, it's true, right? Hokkien will also correct. Right? So what about English? So at least it gave me a point for examination of conscience. In Singapore, Christianity is largely seen as English educated. Right. If Christianity, if the first impression of the non-Christian is a Christian or a Roman Catholic is English educated and probably can speak well, that is and they shall know Christians by their love, right? That's probably not the correct calling card.
That's true.
Yes. Yeah. So over time, as a result of this incident, I pray, and through hopefully my witness, students may say to me, Che, you're Christian. No wonder you treat us fairly, even though we always irritate you. You never scream at us. When you scream at us, you will come and apologize, but also still tell me why I scream at you. Help mutual understanding.
Right.
So I think, or you think fairness, justice very important, and you practice it. If they say such things, then it becomes an opportunity for explicit witness. Because Jesus also treat me fairly.
Indeed.
Jesus never scream at me, but he will tell me when I'm wrong. Jesus has saved me.
Right.
Do you want to know more about him or not? And then from there, dialogue of life can happen. So at least for me, as a father, educator, etc., that's what I hope to share with my daughter. I witness to my wife also, and that's what I do as a Christian educator.
Thank you so much for sharing, Sister and Vic. I've had a wonderful discussion, and I hope you've had it as well and experienced it. And I think truly, as I said, I think we have ministered to each other as well. And for our sisters and brothers, for you listening and tuning in, thank you so much also for joining us. And if you've spent the time with us from the start to the end now, we hope also that you take away something and you realize how God is calling you in your mission to be part of the church and to be a witness for the church in the world, because it need not be the biggest things straight away, but it's in the small things, right? And so it only really leaves me to tell you, Victoria, you're going to have to come for more interviews because if that's going to help you read a little bit more. but thank you, really, and the fact that you took the time to go and do all that, I'm really very appreciative, and so with your sharing. But let me thank Sister Leticia. Sister Leticia Candelario Lopez is a missionary, a Verbum Dei missionary from the, and she's also, she was a Synod. You're still a Synod committee member? But you were
APC,
part of the process.
Yeah, I was part of the process.
Yes, you are a very important part of the process, actually. Sister teaches theology and ecclesiology at the St. Francis Xavier Major Seminary. She also teaches at the Catholic Theological Institute of Singapore. She's a member of the international team sponsored by the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity that is responsible for writing the 2024 text for the World Day of Prayer. And she's also a member of the Archdiocesan Catholic Council for Interreligious Dialogue and the Archdiocesan Catholic Council for Ecumenical Dialogue. I don't know how you find so much time.
Exactly.
Then, of course, we have Victoria. Victoria is, she's very jealously kept secret in the Archbishop's office, but we're very blessed to have her, and she's also the correspondent at Catholic News. She recently returned from Rome, participating in a program called Faith Communication in the Digital World, a synodal perspective. And we have Nick Tree. Nick Tree is a lay theologian, and he has a master's in theology from the John Paul II Institute in Melbourne, Australia. He's a member of the Catholic Theology Network here in Singapore, and he has been, for us for this particular series, our research producer. That just leaves me to tell you or assure you that if you want to continue to listen to this on our live stream, particularly you'll be able to listen to it on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. and on the same day there is an encore broadcast at 5 p.m. Also, don't forget you can catch us on our podcasts. You'll be able to find all of that, and also on our Archdiocesan YouTube channel. Right. Thank you so much for being with us, and we want to say a big goodbye. You take care, and God bless you all. Bye-bye now.
Bye.